it was a fantastic time for us to be working with Brian Masterson at that time. We've seen him again quite recently, actually. He came to a show that we did,
That's right.
and he's just a fantastic guy. But he had a breadth of experience, technically as an engineer, but also musically. He'd recorded the Rolling Stones. He recorded the Unforgettable Fire for U2. So he had a breadth of knowledge about sound and music. He's a musician himself. He's a bass player. Um, and so he had a sensitivity for what we were doing. And then he helped us look at presentation and arrangement in a way that we hadn't really been able to consider up until that point. So I think it was a great time to work with Brian.
Yeah, it was.
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party, your weekly musical happy hour where musicians pick an album from their back catalog and tell the stories behind their favorite tracks in front of a live online audience.
This week we talk with traditional Irish band Altan. We revisit their 1993 album Island Angel, talk about the painting that inspired the title track, and get the crack on everything from their varied approaches to recording to what they pack on tour. So pour a pint, grab a snack, and kick back as we listen and laugh together here on the Back Catalog Listening Party, where it's always Friday and old albums never sounded better. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And today we have joining us all the way from across the pond in Ireland, members of the band Altan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
And folks are very excited. Connie joining us from Richfield.
Okay.
Chris joining us, checking in with a big cup of tea on this beautiful February day in Minnesota. Yeah, it's a chilly one here in Minnesota. Not going to lie, double digits below zero. We're happy to be cozying up with all of you. And Mairead, I know that you are joining us from Donegal. It's not as cold there, but I hear that you have your fire going.
You hear the crackle of the fire there?
I love it. I think we all could cozy up to that a little bit. Why don't we have so Mairead joining us from Donegal, Kieran joining us also from Donegal, and Mark joining us from Dublin, and Altan, one of the biggest traditional Irish bands. And been going for, I hear, over 40 years. This is crazy. I don't know how that happened. But Mairead or whoever, if you want to give folks who are maybe less familiar with Altan, if they've been hiding under a rock or something, maybe you could give us the little origin story about how the band began.
Well, we began many, many years ago in the early 80s. We were asked to play at the Listowel Writers' Week, and that was, Kieran Kern will know the date of that, 1985.
1st of June.
1st of June, 1985. So we decided for that gig that we'd get Kieran and Mark, whom we knew very well, to rehearse a bit and try and put together a band. And it was all fun and games, and we didn't really think much of it. And all of a sudden, we were asked to make an album for Gaelin, which was called Ceola Dúi. And then when Green Linnet Records started off in Connecticut, they asked us to make our first album called Altan. And we did that. And, you know, we just kept plowing. Myself and Frankie were teaching. Kieran Kern was teaching. Mark was working in insurance. We had the lovely Dahi Sproul, who's a Minnesotan now.
Yeah.
And he was over there, and he kind of encouraged us to go to America around that time and said, come on over and play a few gigs, you know. So that's how it all began, very, very organically in the 80s and then into the 90s. And we went full time.
Yeah. And put out, I don't even know how many records you've put out over that period of time.
You'll be asking us.
Anyone's guess.
You know, Mark.
I think it's 15 studio albums and then a couple of other compilations. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
you
album...
kind of lose count. You lose count after about 4 or 5.
For sure. And This album that we're going to revisit today came out in 1993, Island Angel. Where does this fit in terms of the discography?
It's the fourth studio album. I had to check that one up. 1993, just before poor Frankie passed away in 94. But this was a very significant album for us because, it was the breakthrough album, I think. It got us a lot of plays and a lot of accolades, we'll say. And Q Magazine in the UK actually said it was one of the best 100 albums of the decade and all of this, which is always very good when you're trying to get gigs.
Yeah.
And you can use these things. But we're still, listening back, it's very nostalgic. It was great fun to make. We had a lovely time in the studio. I think the material on it was very much unusual and very Donegal based. And then the likes of Mark and Kieran, there, our backers, they put a lot of thought into the arrangements and how it would sound. And we just loved the rawness of that as well. And with this contemporary backing to bring it alive,
Excellent. Well, we are so excited to dig into some of this album. And the first track that you picked to feature from Island Angel is, of course, a series of tunes. Is there anything you want to say about this track before we dive in?
Yeah, well, the Humours of Andytown was composed by Frankie himself. He just decided, he didn't decide, it just happened. Andersonstown in Belfast is where he's from and where he was born. And he was a very, very proud Belfast man. And we really liked the tune. We thought it had a nice vibe to it. And we put it with two traditional tunes, the Kylebrack Rambler and the Gladstone. And it's a great selection of tunes. We have to start playing it again.
All right. Well, we're excited to kick off our show today with this medley. This is Altan here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Yeah,
All right. And that's how you kick off a show.
that's right.
That's Altan, who is joining us live from across the pond in Ireland. And Connie says, just what we need on a cold day. And amen to that. And, this is our weekly musical happy hour. And depending on where you're tuned in from, the weather might not be as chilly as it is here in Minnesota today, but I am rocking a cup of hot tea in my back catalog listening party pint glass.
Ooh, nice.
Because I need
I like that.
all the warmth I can get. And I forgot to ask, are you guys enjoying anything? I see, Mairead, are you also enjoying some tea?
Oh, I am. I have tea and water, every beverage possible.
And Tony, are you enjoying any kind of beverage or snack?
Yeah, given the time difference here, it's a little earlier than normal when we're taping. So I have a blackberry bubbly water in my back catalog
lovely.
listening party pint glass.
And we realize it's a little later where you are. Anyone else having a beverage or snack? Kieran, Mark, or are you guys just hanging out with the music?
I'm just
Moderation
drinking water.
in all things, including moderation.
Very good.
So I'm only having the half a bottle of whiskey tonight.
Oh, well, that's good. Moderation's important.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, that track, of course, was getting me moving. Again, it's a little earlier here, but I was wanting to dance on that number. And when you first started playing together, did you play a lot of like Kaylee's and a lot of events with dancing, or were you always kind of just a concert band?
Mark.
Well, it was mainly performance music. That's what brought, Mairead described that first concert that we did down in Listowel for Writers' Week. And when we came together, it was kind of putting music together for performance. So we did, of course, end up in situations where people would dance at our gigs, but it was mainly for concert, really. That was how we started out.
And
We've ended up dancing ourselves on stage by times,
Well,
I've
that whiskey will
perfected
do it,
the limbo dance, at the side of the stage under the microphone. I think that's always an impressive entry,
Yes.
from the.
You see, Mark's wife is a world champion dancer. So we actually had her as a percussionist on one of our tracks. And I can't remember which album was that, Mark. Was it Horse with a Heart?
No, it was Harvest Storm.
Was that Harvest Storm?
Yeah.
Frida actually danced for us and we used that as percussion.
I taught her everything she knows,
Well, earlier you had mentioned something that caught my ear about contemporary backup. Can you explain that to me, like kind of what that means in the context of the music we're listening to?
I'm sorry, you dropped out a little bit there. Contemporary, what did you say?
I thought maybe Mairead said something about that it was taking like some traditional elements, but putting more contemporary kind of backup or rhythm to it. And I was just curious to hear more about that.
That was always a thing with everybody, with all of the members of the band. Frankie, for example, I remember, was very interested in blues and other kinds of music. I guess we were young at this stage, with plenty of youthful energy, but we also had a lot of varied, I suppose, exposure to different kinds of music. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of jazz, and that's always been a big interest of mine. And I know, Kieran, I won't speak on your behalf, but I know that you listened to, for once, I know you listen to a lot of country music and modern music.
Really?
And so those started to express themselves. Yes, you like that. And you like, I believe, a little bit of hip hop. A little bit of hip hop.
Could you pick my
would
favorite
get you
track?
up and boogieing around the sitting room, I believe, of an evening.
You have it.
Kieran, you tell them where your background.
Well, I suppose my background
Upbringing.
was more traditional, and I suppose being aware more of the bands that were around when I was growing up, like you Plankstein, people like that. So you were listening to what was going on there in the back end as well.
And so I suppose the point is that a lot of these things that we were listening to somehow started to come into the music that we were playing and arranging. So it certainly for us, it had a freshness at the time. And I think we've always tried to keep, bringing in, drawing on whatever musical ideas are inside us to enhance the material that's there, when we're coming together to do a recording.
Yeah, even yet, we still listen to a lot of contemporary music, anything from, experimental to rock and roll to, whatever is beautiful to the ear. And we try and bring that into our our own arrangements in order to make these beautiful old songs, to make them more, you know, eh, palatable to the ear of, like, for instance, I sing a lot in Gaelic. So it's sometimes nice if there's a nice arrangement of a song that it'll bring people and just to listen to the sound of the song rather than what it's about. And you can read about what it's about, but to me, it's really important that it sounds beautiful, that it has to have a quality of melody and harmony that is very attractive to the ear.
Mhm. Well, it's attractive to my ear. As it sounds really fantastic. And you mentioned that that medley of tunes we just heard was one of the tunes that some of them were from Donegal,
Yes.
and I know that's always been a sort of focus of Altan. Can you talk a little bit about what makes the music from your area unique, or maybe different from different parts of Irish music?
Well, Donegal, if you look at the geographical aspect of where it's situated, it's northwest of Ireland, and it's kind of cut off by the political north, which is part of the UK and the rest of the Republic. So we were kind of cut off there in a little island of our own. And in a lot of ways, not only in recent politics, but even in the geographical topography of the place. Like there's a huge range of the Derryveigh Mountains comes down in the middle of Donegal and splits Donegal up, and it's one of the biggest counties in Ireland. So you have a huge acreage of place where there's a lot of people, and all of a sudden, the fiddle music kind of was predominant and is predominant still. And there was a lot of fiddle music, and a lot of the tunes that you would hear down the country, it had a little bit of a different accent to what we would do. And I think the remoteness made the music very special. And Donegal was very inaccessible until very recently. So maybe that's what kept the tradition very strong. And I think we had a lot of connection with Scotland as well. So people going to Scotland to work for a living and bringing back songs and bringing back tunes. And that connection, the connection with Scotland would have gone back into even medieval times when it was a Gaelic nation over there, and the people from Ireland would go over and help the Gaels over there against invaders. So, but then in the last few hundreds of years, people would go from Donegal to Scotland to earn a living, and while they were there, they'd obviously be mixing with the locals and singing songs and playing tunes, and that would come back over. So there was this huge connection with Scotland, and you hear it in their music.
Hey there, would you like to be part of the live show? Well, become a member of the Back Catalog Listening Party Patreon, and you'll get a backstage pass to weekly online tapings where you can ask the artist questions and participate in the live chat with a fun community of like-minded music nerds. You'll also get a first look at upcoming guests and receive invitations to special live streams and private after parties. So join the party today at patreon.com/Back Catalog Listening Party.
Well, we want to get to as many tunes as we can because there's just so much on this record. So this next track, is it Dulaman? Is that
Dulaman, yeah, that's it's a seaweed that people would use for to fertilize the land, and it was very important. So people would collect the seaweed at the seashore and go to the markets and sell them. But in this particular song, the seaweed stands as a metaphor for uh, there's the Dulaman Gaela and the Dulaman Moira, which is the two classes of society, the lower class and the upper class. And it becomes, don't marry into a class that you're not from.
Fascinating. All right. Well, we're looking forward to giving it a spin, says Altan here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
All right. Music from Altan, Dulaman, from their 1993 album Island Angel, which we are revisiting today with members of the band joining us live from Ireland here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. And I can hear those contemporary influences that you were talking about earlier on that track. Yeah, exactly. As Tony was motioning, the bass lines coming in.
But it's funny, listening back to that, I remember all of our friends and all of the funny things that happened while we were doing the recording, but most especially the people that joined us on the recordings to get those sounds, so of course that's the wonderful Steve Cooney on fretless bass. And I know we also had Donal Lunny, who played on that album. And I think on percussion on that track, if I'm not mistaken, Mairead, was Tommy Hayes, was it?
That's right. Yeah, it was. It was just fun. It's still the most requested song that we do. We always try and bring it into the setlist somewhere because people are always asking us to sing it. So I was just thinking there now, it would be one of these ones that maybe on Irish radio they would play it now during the day. We should bring it out again because it's one that talks to people because of the repetition and everything, and it's very kind of uplifting and all of that, and it has that lovely rhythm.
Mhm.
So all of that works when you're singing in another language.
Yeah, I was really just loving just the different kind of textures and layers I was hearing in the arrangements. How did your band at this time kind of go about putting all that together? Did it come from just lots of live playing and then you can just go in the studio and do it as is, or is there an element of kind of constructing it for the recording?
Mark.
Plagiarism. Just
Isn't all
ripped it
art?
off wherever we could find it, and then I know. How did it come together? I think, people would get, and this it wasn't always the one person. Individuals within the band would get an idea about how a phrase or a verse or a song should go, and we'd kind of pursue that and try out different things. So there was a little bit of it um, became formalized when we were in the pre-production part of the project. But
Okay.
some of it also
Mhm.
happened when we were in the studio. Sometimes when you're recording, things can just happen that you hadn't expected, and maybe happy accidents. That can also happen. So I think there's a little bit of that maybe about the track too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bouzouki on that, Kieran. How
Uh,
did you?
Well,
I
I
can't
think
remember.
so long ago I can hardly remember it, but I think Mark had a kind of a chordal structure down, and then we tried to find a place for the bouzouki on top of that, and I don't know, Brian Masterson also produced that or recorded that album. I think he had some input sometimes too when it came to putting stuff
Yeah.
together. He was very good.
He was very
Yeah.
creative, yeah, and he kind of he loved the band, and he kept encouraging us to go down these unusual routes that we wouldn't think of, and like the studio becomes like another instrument. I think it's never a good idea to go in totally, oh, this is what we're going to play, because it always changes, and even the sound of the studio makes you want to approach it in a different way. I thought that, Mark, and with that song anyway, it became alive in
And
the
it was
studio.
also the first completely digital recording that we had done. There was no tape involved. I remember we were all excited about that at the time.
Yeah,
Had
that's
more
true.
options
Yeah.
to track and stuff. Yeah. Were there any like kind of overdubs and things like that? I know it was early days in digital recording.
Oh, we did overdubs, didn't we, Mark? Did you do a few
Well,
guitars?
the guitar went down first time. I don't know what anybody else did,
You're perfect always.
Well, I know a lot of folk music, people are like, well, it should just be live and exactly how it is. But then, like you mentioned, the studio can become another player, and obviously
Well,
you can start doing.
Why record something and say, let's, like, I do love the idea of going into a studio now and just playing the tune straight and making it with all the flaws. I love that sometimes, because you can make things very perfect nowadays, and we don't want that. You want the feeling that you want all these elements to be part of a recording nowadays. Like, while long ago you'd be trying to perfect everything, I've kind of run away from that.
It's
Yeah, well,
funny. There's always been a few different schools of thought, even within the band, about that. When I love high fidelity recording, and I was always a big fan of Steely Dan, for example. And I recall even Frankie and myself having these conversations, and he loved the rough energy of Rory Gallagher playing blues, and I guess it's somewhere in the middle, that you really want to find the sweet spot, because you can have the recording as as you want it, but you have to have the humanity and the energy in it too. So somewhere in between those two, I think there's a balance.
Yeah, and I think that thing in the band where some people are coming from two extremes, that's where it becomes magical, because you have to compromise somewhere. And as you said, the sweet spot is when we do compromise and everyone's happy, you know?
Yeah. I was wondering, how long did you take in the studio to make this record? Like, you just set aside like a week and we're going to record all the tracks, or was this over a period of time that you worked on it?
Kieran, can you remember?
I would say maybe a couple of weeks recording, maybe. But we would have obviously pre-production before that for I don't know how long. So we would be sort of prepared going in, and then obviously things change in the studio as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic. Really Folks are loving the music. And if you are out there coming late to the party, like Penny, just arrived, never too late to enjoy great music. And she says, I love Altan. And Chris had a question. He said, of course, it's a big question because I'm sure each of these experiences were very different. But he was asking about working with artists like Dolly Parton, Enya, the Chieftains, Bonnie Raitt, Alison Krauss. Obviously, you've collaborated with many fabulous artists of many genres over the years. Is there one that maybe stands out?
Well, it has to be Dolly. Like, I mean, larger than life and so generous. What we loved about her was how ordinary she was for such a big star. And, you know, that always stays in my mind, how welcoming she was with this huge stardom behind her and everything. And she always ended up, we'd be in the studio, you know, playing with the Del McCrory band or playing tunes, or, you know, in a corner with Alison Krauss or something. And next thing she'd come over and she'd say, I want to be with you guys, you know. And she just, you know, her just humanity was so lovely. And I was very impressed by her. And like we're very lucky. We've worked with so many great people, like the Chieftains and Enya Brennan, who's my neighbour, like, and Bonnie Raitt, who loves Ireland and loves Irish music. And she's one of the best guitar players in the world, of course. And then Ricky Skaggs and, you know, all these people. But what we realised was how welcoming they are, and they've always been to us, you know, and we feel very privileged to have played with them.
Yeah. Amazing talents. And I realized that we haven't actually talked about what all the instruments that you play, because, you know, I know this is just 3 members of the band, and you I don't know what size the band was at the time you made this record, because, you know, if it was the same size as it is now,
so.
But
it was a 5-piece.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
5-piece. Yeah.
And obviously, Mairead, you I think what you play is given up by your backdrop right there in your home. Beautiful violins and fiddles happening.
I have my fiddles behind me. Fiddle, and Kieran plays. Kieran, will you explain your instrument?
The bouzouki, and I have a bouzouki guitar as well.
And
they're made by Stefan Sobel. You know, I presume. I presume most people know what the bouzouki is at this stage, or do they?
No,
I would describe it for some. I bet most of our listeners do, because they're very erudite. But I think it can't hurt to describe what it is. They probably would recognize it if they saw it.
It's based on the Greek instrument, but it's got a different. The Irish one has got a different body shape. It's flat back, and I suppose it's played totally different to what the Greeks would be playing their bouzouki. It's used mainly, I suppose, as a backing instrument. I think that's it.
And Mark, what is it that you play in the band?
Well, guitar mainly. I learned piano when I was a kid, and I'm really brutal on the tin whistle, but I've never been allowed to play it in any recording.
You're quite good.
I think I have a lot to bring. on the whistle, but nobody agrees. So it's the guitar pretty much.
Well, it also
Yeah.
seems like you bring the crack to the band as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
What I
yeah.
tell everyone.
And by the way, this is a term I was just talking about this term with someone recently, which is one of my favorite Irish terms. Maybe you could describe, because there isn't a real direct translation in English for what that means. The crack. Is there? Can any of you take a stab at what that word means or how it's used?
On Kelly's.
You're full of it.
Me, crack,
Yeah.
Full of it.
fun, I suppose.
and people often say like, "What's the crack?"
What's the crack? What's
like,
the
what's the deal?
story? What's
Yeah,
the
what's the
story?
skinny?
Like we use it in every aspect of Irishness, I suppose. What's the crack and where's the crack and where's the fun? Where's the party? You know, it's all to do with fun. But we do also have a as regards the instruments, we have another fiddle player who's actually listening in on YouTube, Claire Friel. She's the baby of the band. And I'd say she wasn't even 1 year old when this album came out. And then we have Martin Turish, who plays the accordion and is a fantastic composer. We're just having a fantastic renaissance again of the music, and with the younger people coming into the band, it freshens up our ideas as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
after 40 years, you want to freshen up the songs and change things up. Again, you're on tour now, and or heading over to the US. You're going to be here for about a month, playing like so many shows. It seems like you're playing every night that you're here.
Yeah, well, maybe that's better for us because the nights off are very dangerous for us.
Too much track. Yeah.
We end up with friends and going out to dinner and maybe having a few tunes, and then we end up kind of just overindulging
We
in
have a
fun.
night off in Minneapolis on this tour, I seem to recall.
Oh, well then.
So that could be
excellent. Good to
Danger,
know.
danger.
Yeah,
Excellent.
well, so we just want to mention that if folks want to catch the band live, and believe me, I've seen them live. You want to see them live. They're playing in kicking off the tour in Texas. I know we have some Texas regulars to the Back Catalog listening party. They're going to be in Arizona, California, Colorado, New Mexico, Washington, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maine, like just everywhere. So including Minnesota, they'll be here on March 19th at the Dakota. So go to altan.ie is their website where you can check all that out.
Well, special show because our other guitarist, Dahi Sproul, will be joining us, I hope. And Dahi lives in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And this year he decided that he did enough with the band, you know. It's very hard on your bones and your body to be on the road all the time. So Dahi decided, why not stay at home and play music around Minneapolis, St. Paul. And Mark now is full-time with the band. Well, he was our European guitarist with us all the time. So now he has to come to the States and
essentially
enjoy
what
it.
happened was they wore out one guitar player, and so now they're working on wearing out the other one.
That's it.
Well,
Give us a new guitar player. This one's broken.
Far from it.
Well, not broken yet, and going
No,
strong.
indeed.
Altan.ie is where you can find out all the details. The Back Catalog Listening Party is brought to you by EFS Publicity. Founded by veteran publicist, promoter, DJ, and musician Ellen Stanley, EFS brings an artist's perspective to the table, working to help clients get to the next level in their career. Services include national and international media campaigns, radio promotions, tour press, crowdfunding, grant writing, and more. Get a quote or set up a consultation today at efspublicity.com. Yeah, and if you just joined the Back Catalog Listening Party, we're talking with members of the band about and revisiting their album that came out in 1993, Island Angel. If you have any comments or questions as we go today, feel free to throw it in the live chat. We'll get to as many as we can, but I think we need to get some more music, folks.
That's right.
The next one is, speaking of overindulging, the next one is the Jug of Punch. Anything you want to say about this track before we listen?
This is a lovely version of the Jug of Punch. Like, everyone knew the Makem and Clancy version, and I found this on an archival recording of an old man from County Derry singing it, and there was a little bit of lilting in the middle of it, and Mark says, "Oh, that lilting has to go on another little bit, Mairead. You have to kind of..." So we kind of juggled it or jiggled it around a bit to suit our style. And I hear a lot of younger people singing. I love the idea that younger people sing it, because it's one of these songs that was always there, but this particular version with the different melody and the lilting in the middle is completely different. And I love the backing that the lads did. The arrangements is really lovely.
All right, I can't wait to give it a spin. This is Altan, the Jug of Punch, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Beside the fire, what more pleasure can the boy desire than sitting down, oh, beside the fire, and in his hand, oh, a jug of punch, and on his knee, a tidy wench, fall the down the day, fall the down the when I am dead and left in my mold, place a flowing bowl. When I am dead and left in my mold, at my head and feet place a flowing bowl. And every young man that passes by, he can have a drink and remember I called the down the day from the down the
Love that. Oh, what
A great ending.
version of that. And yeah, a great ending. And yeah, I love how the warmth of that recording. It feels like I'm coasting up to that fire that you have going on. Right?
That was, I have to say, Brian Matheson had a lot to do with the arrangement, the ending there, because I was just lilting along to give a guide to the fiddle, and he says, "No, we're going to keep that in," but it
I'm
was
glad.
it's one of my favorite tracks actually, and I love the idea of it. It's your man is dead, but at my head and feet places a flowing bowl. I think that's how we'd all like to go. It makes things so real. It's great.
Well, and I love the interplay between, you mentioned that you did it at first just as sort of to go back and forth with the fiddle. And I love that your voice is such a natural counterpart to the fiddle. But I also heard another harmony voice on that. Was that you being recorded again, or was there another singer on that track?
That was me and myself. And I think, we decided why not have a harmony line in the middle of it. Yeah, we did that a lot, and it's something I enjoy doing, because it just expands. Again, using the studio to make it more appealing and all of that. It's one of our favorite, our favorite tracks. That one.
Well, it's sounding great, and for folks who are enjoying the music, either in the live taping or on the podcast, if you're liking how it sounds in that format, you have to get the real deal, the real high res audio files, because it just sounds beautiful. And you can buy their music at their website, altan.ie, or through Compass Records. They have CD copies as well as you can download the digital tracks. So whatever way you want to experience the music, you want to do it with headphones and maybe a Jug of Punch. I don't know, whatever you need. But it's sounding great. It doesn't need any support in that regard. Just the headphones.
I remember Mark putting that little flourish on the guitar in. I remember that was very late one night. Mark, remember that? You went in and
there were
overdubbed
many late nights that I don't remember over the course of that recording, but that one I do remember.
Yeah, that was
again,
that
it was Brian.
gorgeous.
Brian was it was a fantastic time for us to be working with Brian Masterson at that time. We've seen him again quite recently, actually. He came to a show that we did.
That's right.
And he's just a fantastic guy, but he had a breadth of experience technically as an engineer, but also musically. He'd recorded the Rolling Stones, he recorded The Unforgettable Fire for U2. So he had a breadth of knowledge about sound and music. He's a musician himself. He's a bass player. So he had a sensitivity for what we were doing. And then he helped us look at presentation and arrangement in a way that we hadn't really been able to consider up until that point. So I think it was a great time to work with Brian.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we'll make sure to put a link to Brian and all the other players and all the other information about their tour and their website and where to purchase their music at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
Yep. If you go to the show notes, you'll be able to check all of that out. And we have time for one more tune here because we know you have to pack up, get ready for this big U.S. tour. A lot of traveling and a lot of instruments. I did want to ask, actually. I know you can't take all those fiddles with you, Mairead, that are hanging on your wall.
I just play them when I'm at home,
Yeah. Do you have just how many instruments do you all travel with? Do you try and keep it to just one per person, or
one?
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
I have so many underpants in my luggage that I've just had to really cut down on the number of instruments I bring, because you can't ever have enough. You can't have enough of them.
Yeah, it's true. Having more underwear is probably more important.
More important for us in the van.
Well, we have time for one more tune, but before we do, I also want to mention that and to thank everyone who has supported the Back Catalog Listening Party. This show would not be possible without the folks that are members of our Patreon community. They support the show and have for almost 5 years now. Woo.
Wow.
It was actually it was just after St. Patrick's Day of 2020 when things shut down. And that's when Tony called me about this idea for a way to stay connected to our favorite musicians and music loving friends. And it's been going on all this time. because of these folks that support the show. Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Becky, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Nikki, Joni, David, CJ, Wiley, Stephanie, Christy, Diane, Hetty, Sandy, Neighbor Ann, BZ, and Delissa, and maybe you. If you want to join our Patreon community, that's how you get invited to the live tapings, and you get first look at all the guests. You can get the back catalog listening party pint glass, and you get invited to special after parties and live streams. But mainly, it's about this. It's about coming together and listening to music. And these are the folks that make it happen. But really, we're just grateful for your ears, all of you, for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something changes when you listen to music together. It really is different.
Even online.
Even online, it's so amazing. I'll listen to these tracks before the show, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I listen to it with the band and with my friends, and it changes things. And we so appreciate all of you for being here and listening and supporting independent musicians, because that's what we need more of these days. And before we get into that last track, I did want to ask about this album art. It's really kind of a haunting piece. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
This is a friend of ours, Ross Wilson. He's from Belfast, and we had met him just before we made up our minds about what the album would be called. And he showed us this painting, and he said, I was on Tory Island last week, and he came home, and he said he saw this face on the island, and he decided to paint it. So he brought it to us, and as soon as I saw it, I composed Island Angel myself, and then the painting is just iconic. It's beautiful. I own the painting. I bought it off him.
Oh, nice.
And it's just a very textured painting. He's a wonderful, wonderful artist, but also understands music. But this was done separately to the music, and we just love it.
It's really beautifully done. And he said you saw the face in the island. Was it like part of
he
the
said
geographic?
It was part of what he came back. That was his memory of being on the island. Maybe he saw a person or a girl there.
Okay.
And then he called it that painting, the Island Angel. Island Angel.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're muted there. Oh,
yeah,
there you go.
I got it. It's such a beautiful cover, and really captures the spirit of the album. And we want to go out with one more track here, another mashup of tunes, Glory Reel and the Heathery
Cruach.
Cruach,
which
and
is
what's Cruach?
Cruach is when you put a lot of turf together, you have a stack of turf. So the Heathery Cruach is kind of a stack of heather. And then the Glory Reel is a reel that was played by the Ihrig brothers. And we used to go and see them and meet these old men. People get grants now to do this, but we used to do it because we loved the music so much. And we used to go to their house, and they'd play these tunes for us. And these tunes are very, very Donegal based. You wouldn't hear them in any other part of the country except in Donegal. So, but they're two great gutsy tunes,
I love it. And what a great way to finish our hour here with Altan here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
All right, Altan finishing up. Yeah. The crowds just can't be stopped. They're enjoying it.
That was great. That was great.
Altan finishing off the hour here on the Back Catalog Listening Party from their 1993 release, Island Angel, which we have been revisiting with members of the band today. Connie saying, what a wonderful show, much too short. Chris saying, great show. Thank you, Altan, for the hour of stories and music. Might be early, but a dingle gin sounds pretty good. Hey, by the time this podcast airs, it won't be too early. So definitely we encourage that, Chris. And Penny also remembering the first time she heard Altan. Dobbin's Flowery Veil was my first introduction to Altan, heard on the radio shortly after Frankie Kennedy's passing. Still takes my breath away. So a lot of fans here on the Back Catalog Listening Party, both new and old. And this has been such a treat to have you all joining us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Our treat. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much.
And Mairead, Mark, and Kieran joining us from Ireland, but they'll be coming to the U.S. For a month-long tour. And you can check out all their tour dates at altan.ie and also pick up this record and all of their great recordings. They have lots of them. So please check them all out because, this is the way to support a band and keep them on the road for another 40 years.
That's right.
Yes, at least.
Yeah, we want
and make sure Mark has plenty of underpants too. So.
I was going to say we can afford to bring maybe more instruments and more underpants.
And we have our new album, of course, Donegal, which is a year old now, but that's still for sale on Compass Records. So everyone is more than welcome to have that.
That's right. Go get it. And if you're listening to this right when the podcast airs, they're probably still stateside here in the United States. And you gotta go see them live because that's the best way to support them. And then you can buy all those records directly from them as well, which is even better.
Yes. And thanks, Vaughn, for joining the party. And thanks to all of you out there for listening. And remember, if you want to get invited to the live tapings, you can join our Patreon community. But mainly, we're just happy for your ears and that you're joining us and kicking off the weekend with great music and conversation and crack, as we were talking about.
That's right.
And thank you so much. And sláinte to all of you out there.
See you next week here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Thanks for joining us on the Back Catalog Listening Party. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, which helps more people discover our show and our guests.
And do you want to be a part of the live show, get a first look at upcoming guests, and receive invites to private online parties and live streams? Then join our Patreon community at backcataloglisteningparty.com.
Have a great week. We'll see you back here next Friday for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party.